2,000 years ago, on the Sea of Galilee, 12 men faced a storm that wasn't metaphorical. It was literal, violent, deadly, waves higher than their boat, wind tearing at their sail, water flooding the hull, and they were terrified. These weren't office workers on a pleasure cruise. These were professional fishermen, men who had spent their entire lives on this sea, men who knew every pattern, every danger, every warning sign, and they were certain they were about to die. But while they panicked and bailed water and screamed into the wind, one man slept. Peacefully, deeply, as if he were in a quiet bedroom instead of a boat being torn apart by a storm. His name was Jesus, and in the next few minutes, he would do something that would change how his disciples and how we understand the nature of peace, about what faith looks like when the storm is at its worst. Today it started early. As soon as word spread that Jesus was near, the crowds began to gather. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. They pressed in from every side, the sick desperate for healing, the curious hungry for his teaching, the broken longing for hope, the skeptical looking for reasons to accuse him. All day long, Jesus had taught them, standing in a boat just offshore so the crowds on the beach could hear him better. His voice carrying across the water as he spoke in parables about the kingdom of God. He told them about a farmer scattering seed. Some fell on the path and birds ate it. Some fell on rocky ground and withered. Some fell among thorns and was choked. But some fell on good soil and produced a crop, 30, 60, even 100 times what was sown. He told them about a mustard seed, the smallest of all seeds, that grows into the largest of garden plants. All day, teaching, explaining, the crowds never diminishing, only growing, the sun beating down, the demands never ceasing. By the time evening came, Jesus was exhausted, completely drained. As the sun began to set, Jesus turned to his disciples. "Let us go over to the other side." The disciples didn't question it. They were fishermen. This was their lake. They had crossed it hundreds of times. And frankly, they probably welcomed the chance to escape the crushing crowds. They simply left. Other boats followed them. Other disciples, perhaps, or curious followers who didn't want to miss whatever Jesus might do next. As darkness began to fall, the small fleet pushed off from the shore. The Sea of Galilee stretched before them, calm in the evening light. Jesus immediately made his way to the stern of the boat, the back, where there was a cushion, the kind fishermen would use to sit while steering. And he lay down, put his head on that cushion, and fell into a deep sleep. This wasn't a light nap. This wasn't dozing off for a few minutes. Scripture emphasizes that he was sleeping deeply, completely at rest, even as they began the journey across the water. The disciples couldn't have known it then, but this peaceful image, Jesus asleep in the stern, was about to be shattered by terror. The Sea of Galilee is notorious for sudden, violent storms. The lake sits about 700 feet below sea level, surrounded by hills and mountains. Cool air from the Mediterranean descends through the valleys and collides with the hot air rising from the lake. The result? Storms that arise without warning. Storms that can turn deadly in minutes. At first, it was just an increase in wind, the kind of thing experienced sailors notice but don't worry about. They adjusted the sail, gripped the oars a bit tighter, kept rowing toward the opposite shore. But then the wind strengthened, and strengthened more. Mark's gospel uses a specific Greek word, lilaps, a furious squall, a violent storm, the kind that strikes with terrifying suddenness and overwhelming force. The waves that had been gently lapping at the boat were now rising. 3 feet, 5 feet, 8 feet, higher. The boat that had been gliding smoothly across the water was now being thrown about like a toy, rising on the crest of a wave, then plunging down into the trough. Water spraying over the sides with each impact. The wind was screaming now, not blowing, screaming, tearing at the sail, making it impossible to hear each other without shouting. They lowered the sail to avoid it being torn apart. They gripped the oars, trying to keep the boat pointed into the waves. If they turned sideways, they would capsize instantly. They bailed water, desperately trying to keep ahead of the waves pouring over the sides. And slowly, the terrifying realization began to dawn on them. They weren't going to make it. This wasn't just a bad storm they could ride out. This was the kind of storm that killed people. The kind they had heard about in whispered stories. The kind that sent boats to the bottom and left families without fathers, without sons, without brothers. The waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Water to their ankles, then their shins, then their knees. Each wave brought more. Their bailing couldn't keep up. The boat was sinking. Any moment now, the boat would be too heavy to stay afloat. It would slip beneath the surface. They would be thrown into the churning water. And even expert swimmers don't survive long in conditions like this. They were going to die. And through all of this, the screaming wind, the waves crashing, the boat being thrown about, the desperate shouts of the disciples, Jesus slept. How is that even possible? How can anyone sleep through this? The disciples saw his sleeping very differently. As they fought for their lives, as water filled the boat, as death approached, their teacher, their master, the one they had left everything to follow, was asleep. Did he not care? Did he not understand? Could he not see they were about to die? Finally, they couldn't take it anymore. They had tried everything they knew. They had used every skill they possessed. They had fought the storm with all their strength, and they were losing. So they lurched through the water-filled boat to where Jesus lay sleeping. They shook him awake. "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" They woke him, not for comfort, not for reassurance, but as a last resort. "If we're going down, you're going down with us. At least wake up and die with us." What happened next changed everything. He stood, somehow maintaining his balance on the lurching boat. Water and wind whipping around him. The disciples staring at him with wild eyes, waiting to see what he would do. Jesus looked at the storm, and he spoke. But he didn't speak to his disciples. He didn't speak a prayer to his Father. He spoke directly to the storm itself. And then he said 3 words that echoed across the water. "Peace, be still." He was speaking to the wind and the waves as if they were living things that could hear and obey. As if creation itself was subject to his voice. And the wind died down and it was completely calm. Not gradually calm, completely calm. Immediately, instantly. One moment, chaos, death, terror. Next moment, perfect, complete, absolute calm. The sudden silence must have been deafening. After hours of screaming wind and crashing waves, the quiet was almost unnatural. The only sound was water dripping off the disciples' clothes and the gentle lapping of now peaceful waves against the hull. They stood there, soaking wet, still gripping whatever they had been holding on to, their minds trying to process what they had just witnessed. Mouths open, eyes wide, not moving, not speaking, just staring at the now calm sea, then at Jesus, then back at the sea. Minutes ago, they were certain they were about to die. And now, perfect peace, as if the storm had never happened. By the way, if you find these videos interesting, meaningful, or enjoyable, please consider subscribing. It really helps. Jesus looked at his disciples, these men who had just been screaming in terror, these men who had accused him of not caring, these men who had been certain they were about to die. And he asked them a question. Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? Jesus wasn't asking about the storm. He was asking about something deeper. He was asking, with me in the boat, why did you think you would drown? After everything they had seen, after all the miracles they had witnessed, after leaving everything to follow him, Jesus was pointing to something missing. What was missing was faith in who he was even in the storm, trust in his presence even when he seemed absent, peace in his character even when circumstances screamed danger. And then something strange happened. The text says, they were terrified and asked each other, Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. They were afraid of the storm. Jesus calmed the storm. Now, they were even more afraid, but of him. The fear of the storm was natural, expected, reasonable, but this fear was different. This was awe, reverence, the kind of fear that comes when you suddenly realize you're in the presence of something, someone far greater than you imagined. And so they continued their journey. The boat no longer in danger of sinking. The water now peaceful. The night now quiet except for the rhythmic sound of oars moving through calm water. They were the same men in the same boat on the same sea, traveling to the same destination. But everything was different. They had left the shore with Jesus as their teacher. They were completing the journey, realizing he was so much more. 2,000 years later, we face a different kind of storm. Not waves and wind, but worry and fear. Not physical danger, but psychological distress. The United States is in the grip of an anxiety epidemic. 40 million American adults, nearly 20% of the population, struggle with anxiety disorders. That's not counting the millions more who deal with regular stress, worry, and fear that doesn't rise to the level of a diagnosed disorder. Maybe you're part of that statistic. The storm in your mind feels as real as the storm on Galilee. Your heart races like those disciples bailing water. Your thoughts churn like those waves. Your fear shouts like that wind. And the question echoes across the centuries. Where is Jesus in my storm? The story of Jesus calming the storm isn't just history. It's instruction. Sometimes your storm isn't the result of your sin or poor choices. Sometimes you're in a storm because you obeyed Jesus. You followed where he led. You did what he said, and it led you straight into chaos. Because some lessons can only be learned in storms. Some revelations of his character only come through crisis. Some growth only happens under pressure. If Jesus led you into the storm, he will lead you through it. Let us go over to the other side. Wasn't a suggestion that you might make it. It was a statement of fact. Which fear defines you? Are you terrified of your circumstances? Or are you in awe of the one who controls them? Are you panicking because of what might happen? Or are you peaceful because of who's in your boat? Are you exhausted from trying to calm your storms? Or are you resting while he speaks to them? You can spend your life trying to avoid storms, control circumstances, eliminate threats, manage anxiety. You can bail water until you're exhausted. You can scream into the wind until you're hoarse. Or you can do what the disciples finally did. Wake Jesus. Invite his presence. Trust his power. Rest in his peace. If this story has spoken to your storm, if you needed to hear that Jesus is in your boat, if you're discovering that real peace doesn't depend on calm circumstances, please subscribe to this channel. We're creating a series on the miracles of Jesus, bringing these powerful encounters to life through animation. Each story is designed to remind you, Jesus sees your storm, hears your cry, and has the power to speak peace. These videos take weeks to create, combining careful biblical research with cinematic animation. Every subscription, every share, every like helps us continue this mission.